Hey there. I'd like to talk about structuring JavaScript web applications, or especially how to keep the DOM out of my controller and basically out of my unit testing. I was asked by a colleague how to structure my JavaScript code to easily test my behavior without the need to have the browser DOM there for testing. And as this also has come up in another field right now, I thought I'd just make a screencast about it and hope that is interesting to you guys. So I am looking at To-Do MVC right now, which is a project to show off different MVC frameworks for JavaScript. I would like to look at the vanilla solution right now that To-Do MVC also offers. So another short word on To-Do MVC. It's basically just an implementation of a simple To-Do application, which I should possibly just show off here. So this basically just offers me to enter some points here, and you see I already played with this. I can add another item, and there you are, another to do. So I'd like to look at the code of the application and see how the structure is, and see whether we can improve a bit. And if I mean improve, look at how we can test this code, because the application so far doesn't have any tests included. So if we look at the structure here, we have the bootstrap code, or the out application code, which creates a storage, object, model, view, and a controller. And the controller does most of the work and needs the model and the view to work. And if you look at the view, this is basically just a template which generates the HTML that the controller then injects into the page. And this is the part that I personally don't really like. If you look at the controller, you see a lot of DOM stuff happening. This is basically a self-made jQuery replacement, or just a simple wrapper around query select. And if I look at how this is used throughout the application, you see that we manipulate DOM stuff in the controller. Now this makes it very difficult for us to unit test that, and I actually like to show you what I need to do to test a simple method in the way that the application is written right now. So I like to use Jasmine for my unit testing in JavaScript, so let's get this. Let's just get Jasmine running, and Jasmine comes with a spec runner which will execute the test, and I can just run that in the browser. I kind of keep forgetting where the file is. Yeah, you can see an example. So we have a spec runner right here, and I need to adjust the path to point to Jasmine, which should just be all in here. So let's see whether we can get the spec runner to work quickly. We don't have any specs for now, so let's create one. We want to test the controller, so a controller spec file, and we'll also have the application code later. Let's maybe create the file first. Oopsie. Just 95 for now. And to set up the application, we need some of those application code. Actually, I just want to test the controller, so let's keep the footprint minimal here. So I won't need the store or the model or the view, but some of the other code. So let's see whether the file just starts up. There you go. We don't have any tests yet, and I'd like to write first test. This is going to take me some time because I have to make sure that I call the function that I want to test and then check that the function has done its job. And the only outcome I can control from this controller function is basically looking at the DOM, because that's what the controller manipulates. So looking at the controller here, I'd like to test this simple show all method here that I had a look at before. And this basically just reads some data from the model and then asks the view to render this and then puts this into the DOM. And this method is fairly short, but we'll need a bit of code to test this. So let's start all that boilerplate code to dozen. We'll definitely need the dependencies, the object itself, for instance. So we have the model, we have the view, and we at least need a fixture to like create the HTML that we're not loading. So we will need to fake this. We will set up those instances here in the before each method, and subject basically is the controller. The controller has its two dependencies, which is the model and the view. Well, we need to create both of those. The model, just mark it. And the model has a method that we'll manipulate. Let's keep this empty for now, I'll have to look it up. Same with the view. So now that we have the subject, and we could look at how to create the first test around this. So we said we want to test this message show all. So the controller should show all entries, right? Basically, we just call the subject our controller, say show all, and expect this to render all our entries that we have. So we definitely need to create those entries first, and this is done by mocking out this read function from the model. So let's add that to the mock, and in model we'll read the caller fake instead. This is where now we have to simulate the function of like the original read function. This gets a callback that the read method calls once it got it loaded all the entries. We will just call the callback instantly with some entries, so which also is going to be mocked out. There you go. Hope that is enough for the read method. Inside the callback, which is the code that we're testing, the view is called with the return data. So we also need to mock this. The view show function, which we need to add here. This will be called with the data, so we can also set up a fake. And in case that we yield the data from the model, we'll return the HTML of that template, which is the render data. So now we've mocked both instances, and the problem now is that we need to we have to write the expectation. The expectation basically is that our DOM node, the to-do list node, has been filled with the rendered HTML. This is basically this element with this ID. So what we could do is just copy the whole thing. We can write an expectation, look at that DOM in the browser, and expect that to equal the HTML that we had the view return. Now this DOM node doesn't exist yet. We definitely need to inject it into the page. So basically creating the HTML fixture I was talking about. So this is getting a bit messy. I don't have jQuery here sadly, so I need to use the browser's own methods directly. I'm creating a simple div, and we'll add this to the body. This is where all the stuff is going in, all the HTML that I need. After every test I need to make sure that this is cleaned up. This is just a bit of code to set up the fixture and remove it once the test is done. And well, I need to create this element here that the controller needs. So the controller needs to manipulate that DOM element in this test. So we need to add that. There we go. Just need to implement this function there that adds an element to fixture. There's a lot of boilerplate code that Jasmine actually offers to do for me if I can use jQuery. However, jQuery conflicts with the application here because the $ is already bound to another value. So I'm going to write this for myself. Also, I think this is kind of a good idea to show what is actually needed to set up this kind of testing. So this is going to fixture append child div. So I wrote a test, created a fixture, added this element that I need for the controller, call the controller, and then make sure that this fixture element is set with the value that our mocks basically return. So this is a lot of boilerplate code that I first need to make sure that this works, because I did type a lot, but we still need to execute this. What we're testing here is basically just that the controller orchestrates the two elements and then put this into the third piece, which is the DOM. So I showed you the code. This is fairly simple, but it's a lot of code to just test this stuff. Let's see. I'll possibly just open the console because I think something is going to break. Interestingly enough, we have a warning down there, but the test actually just works. Let's see if I can make this test fail. So to make sure that the test actually does something. So I'm testing that the to-do list element here has something in it. If I just change that, rename this, the test should break. There you go. So I kind of got lucky the first time I wrote this down here, this 40 lines of code. We have a working test right now for the controller, but you see I have a lot of code touching the DOM here, which is really annoying. So that's the first 50 minutes gone, I'd like to be a bit quicker on implementing a proper view which can kind of abstract this DOM interaction out of the controller and take this out. Let's see how far I get. So I did show you the view, which I believe is not a view, it's actually a template. The view for me is a bit more active, as in that it manipulates the DOM. So I'd like to rename this first here and call it template, making room for the view that I want. So rename the template here, just a very quick naming thing. Let's see, we'll check that the application still works. No, of course it doesn't. Could I renamed the object? This is the template right now. This is the template. And this one is 2. There we go, that works. And rename this file to template. And then need to change that in the index.html to source that file. There you go, everything still works. I can change that element. There you go. So now we have room for the view. Let me fix that here quickly. So we need to add the proper view to the controller now. And I'd like to introduce, now that we have a template instead, I'd like to introduce the view that I've been talking about for the last minutes. So an empty file to start with, we're adding this to the index file. And writing the usual boilerplate stuff. Constructor, view, and then adding this to the namespace. There we go. The application now should be able to create a view. Although there's nothing in there. I can pass this on to the controller, which now receives the view. Yeah, so the application still works. I just added a bit of boiler code, nothing special. And now we can start with pulling out some code. There's one short reference I'd like to make, as in the view I am planning to write is going to be a very, very slim one. Martin Fowler calls this a passive view. It's basically a very simple view that does as few as possible, which basically allows me to skip unit testing the view. At least a lot of my colleagues at ThoughtWorks don't really test the view using unit tests. They just make sure that the acceptance tests do that on the way, and put all the important and difficult logic inside the controller. So we are going to write a very simple view right now, just enough so we can pull out the DOM from the controller. making testing simple. So I was talking about the to-do list part. So this is the part I'd like to pull out. So let's look at the occurrence here in the show all method. So instead of manually calling the template with the data and then putting this into the DOM, what I like to do is just call the view, tell it to render the data for the entries, and be done with it. And move this logic to the view. So what I'm going to do is just implement a simple method that's just called render, which understands a command, which is here show entries, because I'm going to implement several commands for different view interactions, and then we'll pass in the data that command needs, and have or basically just then move the code over. So we need to pass that new command, which is just show entries. And basically just call the code that the controller called before. So instead we'll get the data which is passed in the parameter here, and we call the template that we still need and fill this into the to-do list. So we do need two things here. First of all, the template as a dependency, and the to-do list. So I'm going to copy this. I can't delete it because it's still used in other places. So for now, we just copy this, make a small change, and all our dependencies here should be met. What we need to set up in the application is our view now needs the template to work properly. So let's see whether the test still works. Type error, this view render is not a function. Well then, what we introduced the view right now, but the test doesn't know about it. So what we maybe can do for now is add the view here. And when we set up the controller in the tests, remember that the original view now is not a view anymore, but it's now called the template. But we introduced a new view, and for now I'm going to use the new object first. So let's see whether that works. This view render is not a function. So I would have to pause for a sec and look at what's going on right now. We added the proper path to the spec runner. So we added the view. We create a view here. I did forget to add this to the controller. There you go. The test with the minor tweak now is still working. That means the application should still be working. And there you go. I can add stuff. So the application still works. So what we now did was just a minor refactoring, pulling out the code. If you look at the place here, it does look cleaner. You can basically just compare those lines. This one here, which just delegates that behavior to the view, and here's the old behavior where we need to take care ourselves inside the controller. Now, this was my biggest motivation: make the code readable, structure the code. but this also gives me the benefit of easing the testing around the controller. So let's see if we can now approve upon that here. So if instead of the view we now put in a view just just a mock here. Let's see if we can deal with that. We need a render method, and we don't want to test the parts that the view does. What we just want to do from the viewpoint of the controller, we want to make sure that the view is triggered with the correct commands, and then we're basically done. So what we can, instead of writing the expectation against the DOM, we can now just say expect that the view the view render function to have been called with show entries is the command, and we need the entries. We basically get rid of this part here, which won't work anymore because we're now dealing with a mock. Let's see what our test says. This view render is not a function, the controller complains. This render is not a function. We create this by objects. Oh, sorry, that's a typo here. There you go, green test. Now that we basically have a mock, we can throw out all the HTML code now that we don't need anymore. So we're not doing any template calls here. I can get rid of this piece here. I'll keep that here for now, so that we at least pass in something. Though this can actually be null, so let's do throw it out. I don't need to set up that fix anymore, which means I can delete that function here, and I don't need to clean up after this fixture anymore. Deleted that template, and have a lot less code here, and the test still works. So that's it. I've been talking for 30 minutes, nearly for 30 minutes, and you've seen it was quite some pain setting up the first controller test. We tested that DOM interaction was made. That was the only way that we could test that the controller was doing its job. Now that we pulled out some code to a passive view, we can basically mock the view and just make sure that the view has been called with the right parameters. And what the view does now, we don't need to take care of that in the controller test anymore. So that is as much I wanted to show. I will keep on the refactoring here in case you're interested in the final outcome. I'll pull out the view bits completely, try to push it to GitHub, and you don't need to look at this yourself. If you want, you can just move forward yourself and try to apply that basic principle that I just wanted to show here. So hope you had fun. Thanks for listening.